Faith, a concept so fundamental, yet often misunderstood. What does it truly mean to have faith? To trust in something you cannot see? To follow a calling you cannot fully understand? These questions are as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago, and few stories answer them as profoundly as that of Abraham. His journey begins not with certainty, but with a radical call that demands complete trust in God's promise. Abraham's story is not merely an ancient tale. It is a blueprint for anyone grappling with questions of purpose and obedience. His life, marked by staggering promises and heart-wrenching tests, unfolds as a testament to the transformative power of faith. For centuries, this narrative has inspired countless generations, reminding us of what it means to step into the unknown with unwavering trust in God. Imagine yourself in the heart of Ur, a city that hummed with life and prosperity. Picture its bustling markets, gleaming temples, and the constant hum of polytheistic worship, a place of comfort and predictability. Yet, amidst this vibrant setting, one man hears a voice unlike any other, calling him to leave everything he knows. That man is Abram, and his response to this divine summons sets the stage for one of the most pivotal stories in human history. Abram's journey is more than a physical relocation. It is a spiritual pilgrimage that reshapes the course of his life and the lives of his descendants. From the moment he hears God's call, he embarks on a path defined not by answers, but by questions. Where would he go? How would he survive? And most importantly, could he trust that this voice, this calling, would lead him to something greater? These are the questions that echo in our own lives when we face crossroads of faith. At the core of Abram's story lies a theme as timeless as it is challenging: obedience. True obedience is not blind. It requires both courage and humility. It demands letting go of control and embracing the unknown. Abram embodies this obedience, but his journey is far from easy. It is filled with moments of doubt, trial, and even failure. Yet, through it all, his faith never completely wavers. As we dive into this extraordinary narrative, we will witness the depth of Abram's trust in God and the intricate ways God shapes his destiny. We will explore the promises that fuel his hope, the trials that refine his character, and the ultimate legacy he leaves behind. The story of Abraham resonates because it mirrors our own lives in profound ways. Like him, we face moments when God calls us to leave our comfort zones, to step out in faith even when the road ahead is unclear. We, too, grapple with promises that seem distant and struggles that test our resolve. Through Abram's journey, we are reminded that faith is not about having all the answers. It is about trusting in the one who does. As we unfold this story, keep in mind that Abraham's life is not just a historical account. It is a living, breathing lesson. His journey speaks to anyone who has ever wrestled with doubt, who has ever asked, "Why me?" or "How long must I wait?" It is a story for every heart yearning to understand what it means to walk by faith. In the chapters to come, we will explore Abraham's journey in vivid detail, peeling back the layers of his struggles and triumphs. Each step he takes offers a window into the nature of God's character and his unwavering commitment to those who trust him. This story is not about perfection. It is about perseverance. It is about a man who, despite his flaws, becomes a friend of God, a title that speaks volumes about the relationship between the Creator and his creation. So, as we begin, I invite you to step into this narrative with an open heart. Let the life of Abraham challenge and inspire you. Ask yourself, how is God calling me to step out in faith? What comfort zones am I being asked to leave behind? And most importantly, am I ready to trust in a plan greater than my own? With these questions in mind, let us embark on the incredible journey of Abraham, a journey that reminds us all that faith is not just a belief. It is an action, a choice, and a legacy. In the ancient world, few cities rivaled the splendor and sophistication of Ur of the Chaldeans. Situated near the Euphrates River, It was a beacon of civilization, boasting advanced architecture, bustling markets, and thriving trade routes. Its streets were filled with the sounds of merchants peddling goods from distant lands, the aroma of spices wafting through the air, and the rhythmic chanting of priests in towering ziggurats dedicated to a myriad of gods. Ur was a city defined by its prosperity and its deeply ingrained polytheistic culture, a place where loyalty to numerous deities governed every aspect of life. Amid this tapestry of wealth and spiritual confusion lived a man named Abram. To his neighbors, Abram was an ordinary figure, a man rooted in his homeland, connected to its traditions and culture. But Abram's life was about to take an extraordinary turn. While the citizens of Ur placed their faith in idols crafted by human hands, Abram heard the voice of the living God, a voice that disrupted the routine of his existence and called him to an unimaginable destiny. God's call to Abram was nothing short of radical. "Leave your country, your people, and your father's household and go to the land I will show you," the voice commanded. This was no ordinary request. It was a divine disruption. Abram was being asked to leave behind everything familiar: his family, his heritage, his security. In a society where one's identity was tied to their homeland and their gods, such a decision was almost unthinkable. Yet, Abram listened. Imagine the tension of that moment. Abram stood at a crossroads, surrounded by the comfort of his past and the uncertainty of his future. To follow God's call meant abandoning not only the physical security of Ur, but also the cultural and religious norms that defined his world. It was a decision that required unparalleled faith. As Abram began his journey to Canaan, the challenges were immediate and relentless. The path ahead was fraught with danger, unpredictable weather, hostile territories, and the ever-present threat of scarcity. He had no map, no concrete destination, only the promise of a land that God would reveal. Alongside his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and a small group of loyal servants, Abram ventured into the wilderness, leaving behind the bustling streets of Ur for the unknown. The contrast between Ur and Canaan could not have been starker. Where Ur was a hub of prosperity, Canaan was untamed, a land filled with uncertainty. For Abram, this journey was not merely geographical, it was spiritual. Each step away from Ur was a step of faith, a step that redefined his relationship with God. Abram's departure was more than an act of obedience. It was a rejection of the idolatry that permeated his homeland. In a world dominated by tangible gods made of stone and gold, Abram chose to follow the invisible God, the one who created the heavens and the earth. This decision set him apart, not just as a man of faith, but as the father of a new spiritual legacy. The journey to Canaan was transformative. Along the way, Abram faced moments of doubt and fear, yet he pressed on, fueled by the promise of God's covenant. This covenant was not just for Abram. It was a declaration of God's redemptive plan for humanity. Through Abram, all nations would be blessed, a promise that foreshadowed the coming of Jesus Christ. Abram's story in this context is a reminder that faith often requires leaving behind what is comfortable to embrace what is divine. His willingness to step into the unknown challenges us to reflect on our own lives. What comforts or traditions might God be calling us to leave behind? What steps of faith are we hesitant to take? As Abram journeyed to Canaan, he laid the foundation for a relationship with God that was deeply personal and profoundly transformative. His story reminds us that God's call is rarely convenient, but always purposeful. It is a call to trust, to surrender, and to walk forward, even when the path ahead is unclear. Abram's journey to Canaan was marked not just by physical challenges, but by spiritual tests that would shape his faith and reveal the depth of God's promises. These tests, though often grueling, were a necessary part of Abram's transformation into Abraham, the father of many nations. At each critical juncture, Abram was faced with choices that tested his trust in God's covenant. One of the first major trials came during a famine that swept through the land of Canaan. With resources dwindling, Abram made a desperate decision to seek refuge in Egypt, a land known for its abundant grain supplies. This decision, however, brought with it a moral dilemma. Fearing that Pharaoh would kill him to take Sarai, his beautiful wife, Abram resorted to deception, claiming that she was his sister. This act of self-preservation revealed Abram's humanity, his doubts and imperfections in the face of adversity. God, however, intervened, afflicting Pharaoh's household with plagues until the truth was uncovered. Despite Abram's lapse in faith, God remained faithful to his promise, protecting Sarai and ensuring their safe departure from Egypt. This episode highlighted a critical lesson. God's faithfulness is not dependent on our perfection, but on his unchanging character. As Abram and Sarai returned to Canaan, another challenge arose, one that tested Abram's generosity and faith in God's provision. The growing herds and flocks of both Abram and his nephew Lot led to conflicts among their herdsmen. Instead of allowing discord to fester, Abram demonstrated remarkable selflessness by offering Lot the first choice of land. Lot chose the fertile plains near Sodom, leaving Abram with the less desirable terrain. Yet, Abram trusted that God's blessings were not tied to the richness of the land, but to the richness of his promises. This trust was further evident in Abram's intercession for the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. When God revealed his intention to destroy these cities due to their wickedness, Abram boldly pleaded on their behalf. His persistent bargaining with God, asking if the cities would be spared for the sake of 10 righteous people, showcased his deep sense of justice and compassion. Though the cities ultimately faced destruction, Abram's intercession remains a powerful example of the importance of standing in the gap for others. Perhaps one of the most complex chapters of Abram's journey involved Hagar and Ishmael. Sarai, frustrated by years of barrenness, suggested that Abram take her maidservant Hagar as a surrogate to produce an heir. This decision, born out of impatience, led to familial strife. Hagar's pregnancy caused tension between her and Sarai, resulting in Hagar fleeing into the wilderness. Yet, even in her despair, God met Hagar with a promise. Her son Ishmael would also become the father of a great nation. This moment is a testament to God's care for the overlooked and marginalized. Though Ishmael was not the child of the covenant, God's compassion extended to him and his descendants, reaffirming that his blessings are abundant and far-reaching. Meanwhile, Abram and Sarai learned a hard lesson about the consequences of taking matters into their own hands rather than waiting on God's timing. Despite these trials, God's promises to Abram remained steadfast. He reiterated his covenant in a powerful moment, changing Abram's name to Abraham, meaning father of many, and Sarai's name to Sarah, meaning princess. This name change symbolized their transformed identities and the fulfillment of God's extraordinary plan. Through these tests, Abram's faith deepened, preparing him for the ultimate trial yet to come. Each challenge served to refine his character and draw him closer to the God who called him. Abram's journey illustrates that the path of faith is not linear. It is filled with setbacks, doubts, and failures. Yet, God's promises never falter, and his grace is sufficient to carry us through. Abram's story during these trials offers timeless lessons for us today. How often do we, like Abram, take shortcuts when God's timing seems delayed? How often do we let fear or impatience cloud our trust in his promises? Abram's journey reminds us that even when we falter, God is faithful to complete the work he has begun in us. The pinnacle of Abraham's story comes with an unthinkable command, a divine test that would push his faith to its absolute limits. By now, Abraham and Sarah had witnessed God's promise fulfilled in the birth of their son, Isaac. This long-awaited child represented not only the joy of parenthood, but the embodiment of God's covenant to make Abraham the father of many nations. It was a promise decades in the making, and Isaac was its living, breathing assurance. Yet, the God who had miraculously given Isaac now called Abraham to sacrifice him. The weight of this command is almost unbearable to consider. Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you. How could Abraham reconcile this directive with the promise God had made? The journey to Mount Moriah was heavy with unspoken emotion. Early in the morning, Abraham rose, saddled his donkey, and set out with Isaac and 2 servants. The 3-day journey must have felt like an eternity, every step a reminder of what lay ahead. The Bible does not elaborate on Abraham's thoughts, but the silence speaks volumes. Was his heart breaking with every mile? Was he replaying God's promises, searching for a reason to hope? Isaac, unaware of what was to come, carried the wood for the offering, while Abraham carried the fire and knife. "Father," Isaac finally asked, breaking the tension, "the fire and wood are here, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Abraham's reply is one of profound faith. God himself will provide the lamb. Arriving at the place God had shown him, Abraham built the altar, arranged the wood, and bound Isaac. The act of binding his beloved son must have been excruciating. Every movement, a stone placed, a piece of wood arranged, must have felt like a betrayal of his love for Isaac. And yet, Abraham obeyed, trusting in the God who had never failed him. As Abraham raised the knife to slay his son, a voice called out from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham, do not lay a hand on the boy. Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." Abraham looked up and saw a ram caught in a thicket, provided by God as a substitute. This moment is one of the most profound in Scripture. It is not just a story of obedience. It is a revelation of God's character. Abraham's willingness to sacrifice Isaac foreshadows the ultimate sacrifice God himself would make, giving his only son, Jesus, for the redemption of humanity. Where Abraham's hand was stayed, God's was not. The ram provided on Mount Moriah points to the Lamb of God, who takes away the sin of the world. Imagine Abraham's relief as he untied Isaac, the tears that must have flowed as father and son embraced. This was not only a moment of deliverance, but a deepening of Abraham's understanding of God's nature. The test revealed Abraham's unshakable faith, but it also unveiled God's ultimate provision, a reminder that he is both just and merciful. For Isaac, the experience must have been transformative as well. To be the son of such faith, to witness firsthand the provision of God, would have left an indelible mark. This event, though harrowing, cemented Isaac's place in the covenant story and foreshadowed the generations of faith that would follow. The story of Abraham and Isaac challenges us to consider the depth of our own faith. Are we willing to surrender what is most precious to us, trusting that God's plan is better than our own? Do we believe that He will provide, even when the path ahead seems dark and uncertain? Mount Moriah teaches us that faith is not merely intellectual assent. It is active trust, a willingness to place everything in God's hands. It is the kind of faith that holds nothing back, believing that God's provision is always enough. As we reflect on this powerful episode, let us also remember its foreshadowing of the ultimate sacrifice made for us. Abraham's story points us to the cross, where God demonstrated His love and provision in the most profound way. The story of Abraham resonates deeply with modern audiences because its themes are universal and timeless. Though the events occurred thousands of years ago, the lessons they teach are just as relevant today. Abraham's journey of faith, obedience, and surrender provides a framework for navigating the uncertainties and trials of contemporary life. At its core, Abraham's story challenges us to confront our own struggles with uncertainty. In today's fast-paced world, where answers are often demanded instantly, waiting on God's timing can feel excruciating. Abraham and Sarah waited decades for the fulfillment of God's promise in Isaac. During that time, they faced doubts, made mistakes, and even attempted to take matters into their own hands. Yet, God's faithfulness never wavered. This patience is a powerful reminder for us. God's promises may not come on our timetable, but they always come. For anyone struggling with delayed answers to prayer or unfulfilled dreams, Abraham's journey is an encouragement to persevere. Faith is not passive. It is active trust, even when the outcome is unclear. Like Abraham, we are called to step forward in obedience, believing that God is working behind the scenes in ways we cannot yet see. Another profound lesson from Abraham's life is the concept of provision. On Mount Moriah, God provided a ram in place of Isaac, demonstrating his care for those who trust him. This act of provision reminds us that God sees our needs and meets them in his perfect way. In today's world, where anxiety about finances, relationships, and the future is rampant, this assurance is a balm to the soul. Think about the moments in your own life when God has provided unexpectedly. A job offer when you needed it most, a friend who came alongside you in a difficult season, or a solution that seemed to appear out of nowhere. These moments echo the story of the ram on Mount Moriah, reminding us that God's provision is not a one-time event, but a constant reality for those who trust him. Abraham's faith also teaches us about enduring hope. The birth of Isaac after years of waiting is a testament to the power of believing in what seems impossible. In a world that often prioritizes instant gratification, Abraham's hope stands as a beacon for those feeling worn down by the waiting process. Whether it's waiting for healing, direction, or restoration, his story reminds us that hope anchored in God is never in vain. Moreover, Abraham's legacy invites us to consider the impact of our decisions on future generations. His obedience shaped not only his life, but the destiny of an entire people. As we navigate our own lives, we are challenged to reflect on the kind of legacy we are building. Are our actions today paving the way for blessings in the lives of those who come after us? For modern believers, Abraham's story also highlights the importance of surrender. The sacrifice of Isaac is perhaps the most striking example of letting go and trusting God with what we hold most dear. In our daily lives, this might mean surrendering our career plans, relationships, or personal ambitions to God's will. True surrender is not easy, but it is liberating. When we release our grip on the things we fear losing, we make room for God to work in extraordinary ways. Finally, the story of Abraham reminds us of the centrality of faith in building a relationship with God. Faith is not about understanding every detail or having all the answers. It is about trusting in the character of God. Abraham's title as a friend of God was not given because he was perfect, but because he believed and acted on that belief. In our modern struggles, whether they involve career uncertainties, family dynamics, or personal insecurities, Abraham's life offers practical lessons. His story teaches us to trust when we cannot see, to hope when the wait feels endless, and to surrender when the stakes are high. It challenges us to live with the kind of faith that shapes not only our lives, but the lives of those around us. As we reflect on these lessons, we are reminded that the God who guided Abraham is the same God who guides us today. His promises are as true now as they were then, and his faithfulness endures through every generation. Abraham's journey is more than a historical narrative. It is a profound exploration of faith, obedience, and legacy that transcends time. His life challenges us to trust in God's promises, even when they seem distant, and to walk forward in faith, even when the path ahead is unclear. Throughout his story, we see a man transformed, not by his own strength or wisdom, but by his willingness to believe in the one who called him. From the bustling streets of Ur to the quiet, windswept heights of Mount Moriah, Abraham's life is a testament to the power of surrendering to God's will. His obedience, though imperfect, paved the way for blessings that echoed through generations. The lessons of Abraham's life are as relevant today as ever. In a world filled with uncertainty and rapid change, his unwavering trust in God serves as a guide for navigating our own challenges. His patience reminds us to wait on God's timing. His hope teaches us to believe in what seems impossible, and His surrender inspires us to let go of what we cannot control. Abraham's legacy also invites us to reflect on our own lives. What kind of legacy are we building? Are our decisions today rooted in faith and obedience, shaping a path for those who will come after us? Just as Abraham's faith impacted countless generations, our own choices can have a ripple effect far beyond what we can imagine. As we close this exploration of Abraham's story, take a moment to reflect on your own journey of faith. Are there areas in your life where God is calling you to step out in trust? Are there promises you've been waiting for, wondering if they will ever come to fruition? Perhaps you feel the weight of surrender, wrestling with letting go of something precious. Abraham's story assures us that God's plans are always greater than our own. His timing is always perfect, and His provision is always sufficient. Whatever your circumstances, know that the God who walked with Abraham walks with you today. His promises have not changed, and His faithfulness remains unshakable. As you consider these truths, may you be encouraged to take the next step in your journey of faith. Whether that step involves waiting patiently, trusting boldly, or surrendering completely, know that God is with you every step of the way. Like Abraham, you are part of a greater story, a story of redemption, purpose, and hope. So I leave you with this challenge. Trust the God who provides, the God who calls, and the God who never fails. Let Abraham's story inspire you to live a life of faith that not only transforms your own journey, but leaves a lasting impact on those who follow. May you walk forward with confidence, knowing that the same God who fulfilled His promises to Abraham will fulfill His promises to you.